Well, I remember it was almost noontime and being so close, a lot of helicopters, a lot of sirens. So every once in a while when I hear a lot of those, it triggers very real memories. And I remember, because I would call my mom about things, and I had just put the children down for nap. And I said, wow, I called her up, I said, something major is going on near my house because of all the sirens, and now they're bringing in helicopters. It was funny, the way they announced the school, you know, you're in denial, because they said the full name of the school, Grover Cleveland, and I'm thinking, well, that's not Cleveland, because your first reaction is, nuh-uh, no, nothing's happening. Well, my husband worked at that time out of town, so he was, I couldn't get a hold of him, and he was in the Bay, and I was trying to get a hold of my brother-in-law or someone. My mom was trying to get there. She lived in Tracy, and she was my backup for the daycare. She was on the license. And unfortunately, you can only get here so fast. I remember trying to get someone there because I knew I wanted to get to the school. And finally, my brother-in-law showed up, and he took over, and my mother was right behind him. And so I took off. Getting over there was the hardest part. And then being so close, I still drove the vehicle, but parked within a block, and then had to try to find my way, and found it to the church first. The church was open, taking people in first, trying to match people up. It was mayhem, but it was organized mayhem. Because I remember walking into the little church that's in front of, on the corner in front of Cleveland School. And they were parading the older children on the stage of the church, and asking people to come to the tables and trying to match parents up with children and what have you. But then I realized it's all older children, so Shannon was in the first grade at the time, so I had to get somewhere else to wherever she was. And by then they had everybody forming outside the cafeteria, and they had people lined up protecting them, and they were moving them through the interior of the school because there was an opening and there's no solid piece, and so they were trying to move them into the cafeteria. So they had, all the parents were mulled around there and just pushing and shoving. And I remember, now I get emotional, a couple of mothers I knew, because Shannon was friends with them, my daughter, and they were standing next to me, and then one of the moms, her daughter was on the list, and so she ran out, and I just knew she wasn't on the list. She was still fine. And the pressure from the crowd got really bad, and finally I had to say something because I was so pregnant. I was afraid that something else would happen, and so I started telling the officers, and they yanked me through the crowd and got me out of there and pulled me in. And then when we got in there, all the teachers were sitting with all their children. Promised myself I wouldn't cry. And Shannon was, when I got to her, her teacher was holding her in her lap. And she was fine. Teacher released her to me, and we went out. And Shannon was really funny because we're a very open family. We talk about everything, and she didn't say anything at first. She's only in first grade, and you know, everything's okay. We're walking out, and a reporter, I know from a Bay Area paper, came up and said, "Would you mind talking?" And I asked Shannon, "Do you want to say anything?" And so she said, "Sure." And she turned to that reporter and she told him everything. She just let it all out, everything that she had been through, what she had seen, and then she was done. I remember her telling us about how when it happened and she heard the popping sounds, and they thought it was fireworks, and they all scattered on the playground, and she couldn't get out of her mind, her friend stood there with her hands over her ears and saw her fall. And she kept asking me for months, why didn't she run? And that was her take on it.